there's a flagrant violation of COVID norms across the country in many different districts. We are going to bring you pictures from Belgavi in Karnataka, from Madurai in Tamil Nadu, from Hisar in Haryana to show you how the common citizen is refusing to follow the directions when it comes to the restrictions imposed because of the surge in cases at a time when the country is reeling under a very severe second wave. The citizens also have to exercise a certain amount of responsibility, but we have found that there are multiple instances of violation of COVID protocols. The visuals that we will show you are showing you right now from Madurai, Belgavi, Hisar and East Godavari districts. Several states have been put under restrictions, but people are finding ways and means of bending the rules, of defying orders. So let's talk about what's happened in Hisar. Again, pictures coming to you from Haryana's Hisar, where farmers are thronging in large numbers. Farmers are headed towards Singhu, Ghazipur and Tikri border. The protesting farmers are not wearing masks. They are not maintaining social distancing. They have called for a nationwide protest on the 26th of May to mark the completion of the 6th month of their agitation at the Delhi borders. 13 opposition parties have also extended their support. But is this fair? Can you allow this kind of a large gathering? We are going back to making the same mistakes like we did when we held those election rallies, and then those events became super spreaders. The effect is only seen 3 to 4 weeks later when you see a huge surge in numbers once the testing picks up, and you see that the fallout of those large gatherings will reflect directly in the numbers in that state. So can we afford this kind of luxury at a time when the country is reeling under the second wave? Can we allow people to gather in such big numbers and then not even wear a mask, which is what we were showing you, that farmers have gathered, they have a cause, but then this is just not the time to congregate in a public space with so many people together in a limited space is just the recipe for disaster. This is just an invitation to the virus to spread quickly, because this is a virus that spreads human to human. One must understand that the biggest enemy for a person is the next human being at this point. When there is a virus that can spread from human to human, you have to maintain a certain amount of distance from the next human being. That is not being done here at all, as those pictures are showing you. This is coming from Hisar in Haryana, and similar instances in other states as well. First, let's talk about Hisar. So, Gurpreet, coming to you live on this. Gurpreet, tell us, how did the administration allow it? I mean, is there no system of taking some sort of a permission in advance to have a rally or a gathering like this? And why would there be a question of granting a permission to this?
Well, that if we can talk about the farmer side, that there is no permission which has been taken from the administration, and it has put a question mark on the state governments also, whether it's the Punjab government or Haryana government. A lot of people, especially farmers, they moved from a various locations towards the national capital, and from Hisar, where we are reporting at this point of time, we can see huge gathering of the farmers. So then, and in this huge gathering, one could not expect that social distancing and following of the COVID protocol. COVID protocol is being violated here. At the same time, what the government is doing in the morning when we have reached here, we have seen that multiple barricades have been put up so that these farmers will not be allowed to be entered in the city. But at the same time, we have seen with the arm twisting the farmers, they have reached there. And at this point of time, what we have learned from the farmer netas, that there is a meeting which is going between the divisional commissioner as well as the 20-member committee of the farmers, where they are discussing about the cases which had been registered against the farmers on the day when the Chief Minister of Haryana, ML Khattar, has come to inaugurate COVID hospital. At that time, there was a confrontation on the last Sunday between the police as well as the farmers, and a lot of cases have been registered against the farmer who were involved in that. Now, if we can talk about the specifically COVID protocol, that in a huge gathering, one cannot expect that the COVID protocol can be followed, but it puts a question mark on the state government. One side, they have imposed a lot of restrictions, whether it's Punjab or Haryana. On the other hand, we have seen that a huge number of the farmers movement from various locations of Punjab as well as various locations of Haryana, and today it's the testimony in Hisar, where we can see that a number of farmers, they have reached here, and they say that this protest is against the administration, Hisar administration and the state government. Why these the farmers were booked by the police when they were holding a peaceful protest, and when the chief minister of Haryana had already left the venue. What was the reason behind this? So somewhere down the line, it seems that the farmers, they don't want to comply the orders of the government, and at the same time we have seen that even the government is reluctant to initiate any action against anyone, and that is one of the reasons why this violation of the COVID protocol is rampant in Punjab and Haryana.
Right, so this is a huge administrative challenge because it is the duty of the local administration to ensure that such gatherings do not happen. Norms are being flouted, large gatherings witnessed in Hisar, and this is not the only instance of a violation of COVID protocol. Gurpreet, thanks for joining us. Let's talk about the other cases that we are reporting today, and this is a story that's coming in from Madurai in Tamil Nadu, a rather intriguing case of how two families have decided to hold a wedding mid-air inside a chartered aircraft, and the reason ostensibly is because there's a limit on wedding attendees on ground, and therefore this whole idea of having it in an aircraft where a larger number of people can attend the wedding. Pictures will show you that again the attendees are not wearing masks. They've taken all liberties to have a wedding inside an aircraft, and this is being done to make sure that they do not have to follow the rules on ground. Mugilan is joining me with more information. So Mugilan, now we know that this matter has reached the Director General of Civil Aviation. It has taken the airline off the roster. The relevant authorities, the crew members have been asked to file a complaint. They have been put under suspension is what I believe. But tell us, why are people taking such liberties, and what is the desperation to have a large gathering at a time when everyone knows that there's a huge risk of the infection spreading in these gatherings?
Definitely, we have seen quite a number of examples of how people very conveniently violating the COVID guidelines here in the state. Earlier, we have seen when the Tamil Nadu state government gave a window period for the people to buy other essential commodities. We have seen this was even conveyed by the chief minister, also stating that several people are misusing the window period given by the Tamil Nadu government and roaming around the city during the lockdown period, and that is why now we are seeing that the Tamil Nadu state government have intensified the lockdown. There is a total lockdown here. Even the grocery or the provisional shops are not open in Tamil Nadu for this complete week. So with that being the situation, now we are seeing a classic example how people trying to subvert the efforts that have been made by the Tamil Nadu state government and subvert the restrictions that are in place. Because as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, only 20 people can participate in a wedding. But here we are seeing a particular family have hired a chartered flight for 2 hours, and they have taken all the family members, that is 161 passengers and 161 family members, and mid-flight there is a wedding that has happened in Madurai since afternoon. We spoke with several authorities, either it be the police officials or the district administration. We spoke with several officials, but there was a confusion, because when we spoke with the commissioner, he said that the airport is in the SP limit, so it is for the SP to act. And when we spoke with the SP said that the incident, that is the marriage, took place above the Meenakshi Amman temple, which comes under the commissioner limit. And when we got to hear from the CIS officials, they said that there was no violation, because they simply adhered to the guidelines and restrictions given to them, but they were not aware of that this family will have a wedding mid-flight. So now, after DGCA stepping in, now there is some clarity.
So therefore, we are going to raise these questions, Mugilan. Why are people doing this? And do they realize that when they come down, when they land, then it becomes equally risky? It just doesn't help anyone to find these innovative ideas to escape up into the air, because when you descend, then again you become a risk for the others. Let's talk about yet another instance, this time coming from Godavari in Andhra Pradesh. COVID norms violated here, where hundreds of people are seen taking part in a religious procession. Andhra Pradesh is under a lockdown, and as per the government orders, only 20 people can take part in a gathering, but you will see hundreds in this procession. So the rules are being flouted. The organizers in this case also have been booked. I want to quickly introduce okay, one more instance of Belgavi, where we brought to our viewers' notice earlier as well. There was a case of a funeral of a horse being conducted. It was some sort of a ritual, a tradition, perhaps, and there was some sort of a religious significance attached to this particular horse. But the gathering, again, it's appalling to see the numbers, the sheer number of people who have gathered for the funeral. So that was the fourth case in Belgavi, and like I said, multiple instances. Let me go across to our experts and guests this afternoon. Yashovardhan Azad, former IPS officer, joining us on the big story, and Dr. Abhay Shukla, national co-convener from the Jan Swasthya Abhiyan. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Azad and Dr. Shukla. Good afternoon. Thanks for giving us your time. I want to begin by asking you, Dr. Shukla, that, multiple instances, as you saw, I mean, look at the way people are so determined to bend the rules. They will go up in the air to have a wedding attended by more than 50 people, which is the limit that Tamil Nadu government has set. Now, under these circumstances, what can we do? How do we make people see reason that if there is this kind of a wanton disregard for COVID protocol, you are only going to make sure that the virus gets to you and there can be major outbreaks after these events?
Yeah, I think it is a worrisome situation. I mean, given the COVID situation in the country, we have currently more than 27 lakh active cases, more than 3 lakh deaths have taken place due to COVID until now, at least as per the records. So in this situation, I think what we are seeing is a kind of a breakdown of governance. And, the compact between the government and the people has become so weak that on both sides, we are seeing a certain kind of failure. And I would say that, at least three things need to be done in this situation by governments. Number one, leaders have to lead by example. And what we saw during April, top national leaders, conducting huge election rallies, allowing events like the Kumbh Mela to proceed with, something like 7 million people participating, that should just not have happened. And what happens is when the national leadership or when the highest level leadership indulges in such activities, people get a message that, okay, anything goes. Number one, leaders have to lead by example. Number two, there has to be much stronger communication, much better communication so that people are reached out to in a way which tells them the consequences. Number three, partnership with civil society organizations and groups of various kinds in a systematic way, which we have seen happenings in some places. And whenever that kind of partnership is there, then people can be brought on board and convinced that, this is not the way that we can control the epidemic. But these are much more proactive kind of efforts which have to be made. Otherwise, we're heading towards a chaos kind of situation.
Yes, I agree with all the 3 points you made. And of course, when we tell people that, why are you doing this, there's always a chance they'll tell you, but what were the leaders doing in the election rallies? Why was the Kumbh Mela allowed to happen? This is nothing compared to that. So that kind of whataboutery, the tendency to cite those examples is always there, which is why, like you said, it's so important for the leaders to set the right examples. Otherwise, they lose the credibility and the authority to impose the same rules on others. Mr. Azad, do you agree with that? And also, I want to ask you the role of police in such situations, because what we have seen is that sometimes when there's a religious sentiment involved, the police also hesitates. And for all you know, the cop also subscribes to that particular tradition. So that makes it very difficult for them, for the law enforcement to intervene.
In such cases, it is not a question of administrative challenge. It's a question of administrative lapse. And I agree with Dr. Shukla when he more or less described that there is a breakdown of governance. I would say there is no governance at all. And in most of these cities, if you see, there is a general air of indiscipline, whether you look at traffic, whether you look at malls, whether you look at cinema halls, anywhere, it's the same thing. I think the biggest mistake which took place was that when in the beginning of this year, there was a lot of, tom-tomming around, even the minister saying that we have conquered the COVID. And thereafter, there was a kind of a mad rush. If you see Delhi, whether it was Sadar Bazaar, whether it was Lajpat Nagar, people were just, moving around without, any caution or anything. And I would certainly say that the problem in India is that the moment you start any kind of governance, there is a protest from all over. There's a protest not only from the media, the government itself, asking the foot soldiers to be, to go slow and to allow kind of, things on ground. Giving roses to people who are violating prohibitory orders. I mean, I don't agree with this. It doesn't make any sense. The other point which I totally agree with Dr. Shukla is, there is a complete breakdown of our society structures. There are no elders you listen to. There are no professors or teachers who can tell their students, for example, right now, what about the religious leaders who can guide people during these difficult times? So apparently, the only thing is the danda by the administration. And the administration, you're absolutely right, is very hesitant to use this on a religious procession because, the violence which follows, the action will be taken completely against these officers. So no one takes a decision as far as the administrative challenges are concerned, and therefore it will continue like this unless we do something very, very strict. We tell all the religious leaders, we tell all the teachers and professors, we tell all the resident welfare associations, everyone concerned, that you better rein in your people. That is the only way. If you can't inculcate discipline, democracy...
So that's the question, sir. If coaxing and cajoling fails, then can we use coercion? Can there be a method, somewhere midway between the two? Dr. Shukla, I want to ask you that, people are not getting this. The problem is that people are not understanding that it's there for their own safety, that these rules are being made. Why is that message somewhere not going down, not percolating to the masses?
See, we have to understand that public health is impossible without involvement of the public, especially in an epidemic. And it's not an us versus them situation that the government is something different and people are something different. Right now, both have to come together. That's the only way we can deal with this pandemic. And for that, there needs to be, as I said, a much more proactive effort to reach out to all kinds of social groups, all kinds of organizations, and bring everybody on board and say this is a national campaign and all of us are in this together and we have to make a joint effort. I think those kinds of efforts have by and large not happened. Maybe to some extent in Kerala and a few other places it was at least attempted. That's not happening. So now there's a kind of a breakdown of dialogue. There's even a breakdown of communication. And in that situation, anarchy or chaos is what tends to result.
Yes.
So we cannot go in that direction. We have to bring together all the different social actors on board on the same page. And political leaders, social leaders have to take the lead for that. And I think that governments across the board must take a much more, proactive and participatory sort of approach and say that if we don't do it through consent, then the last option will be coercion. But if there is a consent that everybody needs to do
but
this,
that is not happening.
Way.
What you're saying is the ideal, that there must be a participatory spirit, there must be a collaborative effort between the public and the government, but we are seeing that sorely missing. Mr. Azad, on the point of, this is not just resistance, there is a defiance now. This is a clear case of defying orders, isn't it? And how does the police play a role here, in your understanding?
I absolutely agree with you. See, the case of farmers, for example, the farmers should not have been allowed to congregate after the 26th January when they unleashed mayhem and violence in the capital. And thereafter, despite all these restrictions, the prohibitory orders, 144, etc., they were still sitting at the various corners. So much so that even people protested. That was the time to police to take action and remove them. Whatever sympathy people had with their cause is diminishing now. And today they constitute a threat. Forget that they're defiance to the government. It's a total threat to the people. And that is why this is time to get tough for the government of Haryana or Punjab and to just kick them out. But the problem is we can't do it because everything moves around votes. Now, the problem with the police today is that police in a situation like this is on law and order matters because the politician is the state's chief executive, has to take orders from there. This is not a case of investigation. So that is why they look up to the chief ministers, and chief ministers definitely will not give them permission because of the fallout, and adverse publicity. But I totally agree with you. In a situation like this, the police in the first case, right in the beginning, should have removed them. Unfortunately, this cannot be done in a country like ours.
Yes. Yes, so you're saying basically that the compulsions of electoral politics also make it difficult for law enforcement, for police to act even if they want to or even if they can. They don't in many situations. So, Dr. Shukla, where does the buck stop then? You know, every society, every community will have their own compelling reason why their ritual must be exempted, why their wedding must be allowed to happen, why they have to invite 160 people and 50 is too small. Everybody will have their own compelling reason. And what Mr. Azad is telling us is that because of certain electoral compulsions, the leaders are loath to impose beyond a certain point, which means then we have a situation here. There's a huge problem.
Yeah. So what I'll say is, how have other countries managed this? It's not that, other countries, including, lower and middle income countries, have managed to control the epidemic, COVID epidemic reasonably well. And we have examples ranging from South Korea to, Japan to various other countries which have controlled it quite well. And they did not even had a second wave. The point is that in our country, as you have noted, it started from the national level, I think, with allowing of the election rallies, organizing the election rallies on huge scale, and allowing the Kumbh Mela, which sent out a huge message. So you cannot say that a congregation of Tablighi Jamaat of 3,000 people was wrong, and a congregation of 7 million people is right. It doesn't work that way. It has to be completely fair and even-handed. We have to say across the board, all religious congregations will not be allowed. And all religious leaders should be given a very strong message that this is just not done. And similarly, no political rallies should have been allowed beyond a certain point once the second wave had become clear. People should go and exercise their vote. That's okay. But why did we need to have these huge electoral rallies? That strong message should have been given right from the national level. I think the onus has lain primarily with the central government leadership and also with state government leaderships to a certain extent to present that example and to take that lead. Unless that can still be done, I think I would say there should be an all-party kind of meeting which is called as a national emergency to deal with this situation, and all political parties and all social organizations should reach out to people and say, now we have to shape up, otherwise this epidemic is going to take many, many more lives. If that kind of united social and political appeal is given, and not just appeal but also a strong intervention in communities, in villages, in urban areas with people, if that kind of strong messaging is done, we still have a chance. But that will require cutting across party lines, cutting across religious lines, and taking this public health emergency as a common humanitarian emergency which all of us need to respond to. I think that is the way to do it.
Right. So, therefore, this is a situation that has to be handled with a more planned approach, and that perhaps is also lacking at this point. And what we have failed to understand as people, as a nation, is how critical this is for our own safety, which is why these instances that are coming, with alarming regularities, somewhere it has to stop. I had a little difficulty, I'm sorry, hearing my guests, Dr. Shukla and Mr. Azad. Thank you so much for joining us on The Big Story this afternoon.